How's it going? Thanks for checking out WrassleVerse. I know the first few episodes I did some watch alongs. I'm not doing that this time. We're going to do something a little different. I'm going to do what I call a parallel a parallel WrassleVerse. I'm going to basically fantasy book or dream match kind of stuff of either a card that has happened, like a pay-per-view or a wrestler's career path. I'm just going to just change things that maybe I would have liked to have seen. And again, I'm not an expert, and this stuff you'll probably disagree with, but you might agree with it too. Who knows? But here's what I'm going to do. So like I just explained, I'm going to take something from wrestling's past and I'm going to rebook it, or I'm going to kind of realign a story or move it a different direction to something that I think would be pretty cool. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the WCW Invasion story and I'm going to rebook it with a couple of different restrictions, you could say. But so this will probably be, I'm going to do one this episode, and then the next episode, I'm going to do it a different way. It'll still be the WCW Invasion, but it will be like that dream, no real restrictions kind of thing. So what's that mean? That means on this one, I'm going to be basically handcuffed by who WWE actually signed. So this is just going to be all the talent that WWE signed instead of being just everybody that was at WCW. So that means I'm not going to have Hogan. I'm not going to have Sting, Nash. A lot of those big names won't be on this one. But also, I'm going to take away ECW. I didn't like the alliance kind of angle. I mean, to me, if WCW was supposed to come in and invade WWE, putting them with ECW kind of makes them look weak to me. I'm not saying anything about that talent. I just think that storyline doesn't hit as well if it was just WCW. So what we're going to do first, I'm going to go through what the actual match card was and just a quick run through, kind of give you an idea of what they did at that time. And this was July of 2001. So this was just a little bit after WCW was bought out by WWE. And we're already at that story of Shane McMahon and Vince McMahon because they had the match at WrestleMania. So this is just a continuance of that story. So here we go. So the first match on the actual card was Lance Storm and Mike Awesome, and they ended up having they had them tagged to go up against Edge and Christian. They got Edge and Christian over on that one. Edge and Christian won. Then the next match, and this was kind of this was a gimmicky thing. I don't mind gimmicks in matches. I don't know if I really cared for this. It was Nick Patrick versus Earl Hebner, and Mick Foley was the special guest referee. Again, I mean, I've watched this pay-per-view. The pay-per-view overall, it's not bad. It's just, I don't think I would have had that match. But again, this is the actual card, and I'll do my reimagining of it here in a minute. They also had Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo go up against APA. Both of those teams were the tag team champions for their respective promotions. And then they had Kidman, who was the cruiserweight champion from WCW. He went up against X-Pac. Kidman got the win. X-Pac was also the lightweight champion at that time. Then they bring in, this is where ECW kind of comes in. And you can, this is where I just didn't care for it. Raven, who I think is great, and I think William Regal's great. But it's just, I didn't like that Raven was being associated with ECW, even though probably at that time he was, because he wasn't with WCW. So Raven and Regal, they put Raven over. He's the one that got the win in that match. And then they have a six-man. They have Kanyon, Stasiak, and Hugh Morris go up against Big Show, Albert, and Billy Gunn. How do I want to put this? I don't care for six-man tag matches or eight-man tag matches. I get why they're in a card. It just seemed like this was one that was, here's some WCW guys, here's some WWE guys, get to work. It just didn't really, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it really made a difference. But WCW won that one. So that was another one for them. Then they bring in Tajiri for WWE and Taz for ECW. This, of course, this is going to be a good match. Tajiri is amazing. Taz is great at this point in time. And so, yeah, so you have something that you probably would have seen in ECW anyway at some point in time. And then we go with the Hardcore Championship, which was ECW's RVD going up against Jeff Hardy. RVD got the win, retained his title. RVD is probably the biggest one that I would have pushed as far as ECW, in which he ended up, a lot of these guys ended up having careers in WWE, but I just didn't think that the ECW angle worked in this situation. So then you have a typical Attitude Era sex sells match. You have bra and panties match. WCW's Tori and Stacy Keibler are going up against Trish Stratus and Lita. And Mick Foley is the ref for that. Having Mick Foley ref twice, it was also something I didn't agree with. I don't even know if that was just something to get him on the card or what. I don't really know what was behind that. Trish and Lita won, and again, that's one of those filler matches too. It's not a wrestling match, right? So then the main event. This is what really saved. Again, this wasn't a bad card to begin with, but that main event to me solidified this pay-per-view as pretty good. I'm not going to blame it. We'll say good, right? I'm not going to put it at that high echelon of top tier pay-per-views, but it was good. It was in the middle. This inaugural brawl. So you had from WWF, you had Steve Austin, Kurt Angle, you had Undertaker, Kane, and Jericho. Pretty solid team. For WCW and ECW, you have Booker T, DDP, the Dudley Boys, and Rhino. So we're already at this point of, I get the argument of WCW and even with ECW just didn't have the star power to compete with WWE's upper card to main event level talent. That's always been the case. I'm a big WCW fan, but that has always been, WCW's undercard has always been so much better than WWE's. So in this main event stuff, this is where I'll talk about this when I do my fantasy booking stuff. I had a little bit of trouble because they just didn't. Yeah, they had Hogan. Yeah, they had Sting, Hall and Nash. Booker T ended up becoming a main eventer. DDP was a main eventer. And then you had Scott Steiner. Sid was in and out. Benoit Guerrero weren't up to that level yet. They were getting there. They're on their way. It just didn't happen. So I understand the logic of this is what you have. This is what you had to deal with. So that was the original card. And they split it right down the middle, 5 and 5 because of that main event. That's when Austin turned. So again, they're taking one of their big time main eventers and they're putting them over into WCW. And again, I understand. And that's what they did. They did the best with what they had. I don't think it was terrible. I do think it could have, doing this, what they did here, even with the Austin turn, if you would have held on for, what is it, like 6, 7 months, it's less than a year, and kind of just kept that story kind of just plugging along a little bit, little bits here, little bits there, you would have had the NWO within a year. So who knows what could have been, but that's the point. That's what parallel WrassleVerse is for me. What if? So here we go. This is my card for WCW's Invasion. Let me get my notes out of the way here. And this is it. This is me being handcuffed by just WCW talent that was signed by WWE at that time. That's all I've got to work with. I also you don't have HBK because he is on hiatus at this point in time. I don't have Triple H because he's injured. So I did look into that. I wanted to know why those two weren't on that card. And I wanted to make this as realistic as possible. Okay. And who knows? I mean, we're never going to know if these matches would have panned out, but who knows? This could have been like an incredible pay-per-view. You know what I mean? So again, no ECW, just WCW. I did take a few things from the original card, but I just kind of flipped them. So to kick off the show, I'm going with Lance Storm and Mike Awesome, and they're going to go up against the APA. So the APA are the champions. It's a non-title match, and they're going against Mike Awesome and Lance Storm. I think you could build a story just because Mike Awesome has and Lance Storm too, has that background of being in ECW a long time ago, that there would have been I think it would have been a pretty good, just brawling match with APA. And in the finish, I even did finishes for these matches. I didn't have to, I guess, but on that finish, I would have had a DQ finish. I would have had something to where Mike Awesome, I don't know, puts Bradshaw through a table. You know what I mean? Or they get, they go get chairs or something, and they get themselves disqualified, so that you kind of leave that door open to keep going with that story. Because again, this isn't the end all be all. Like, I would plan for this to go on up to the next WrestleMania, which I'm pretty sure would be when the NWO would be able to come in. So that's the first match. And my card's not nearly as long. The original card is 10 matches. I didn't do that. I wanted to keep in mind of kind of timing it to where it would only be, and I don't know this for sure, but the logic of it would be that it's only about 2.5 hours. I am a stickler now that if, they call them PLEs now, if they're over 3 hours, even the big ones, I'm glad WrestleMania is 2 nights. But even like the big ones, if they're like over 3 hours, that's a lot. That's a lot to sit through, even for any fan. You lull out. You just kind of, oh, here we go. We're in hour number 5. I wanted to keep it kind of consistently short. So the second match. So to me, I think that match, the APA with Awesome and Storm, would start off pretty hot. I think the fans would be into that. So then I would have Tori versus Lita, just in a pro wrestling match, and I would have Stacy Keibler come down with Tori as her manager or whatever, and then I would end up having Lita win. She hits a swanton, she wins, great. And then just kind of one of those things of having Tori and Stacy kind of like, oh, you beat us, so now they're putting the boots to Lita, and then have Trish come down and save her. And again, I'm trying to make this to where the doors can be open to go further down the road. So that, I think that would open up that. And to me, that's a pretty good number 2 match spot. Now, here is where this is just where I just put a match in. I put Hugh Morris in against Test. If Test wasn't available because of injury or some other reason, I couldn't find it. So I put him in against Test. I would put Hugh Morris over a Test, just to have that, kind of have him showcase that. And I know Bill DeMott has had his, some people like him, some people don't kind of thing, but to see that dude do a moonsault was great. You know what I mean? So it was no laughing matter, is what he called it. And I'd have him hit Test with it and get the win. So that's how we would go there. Again, I'm trying to just make this a evenly flowing show to end with a big bang, right? So that, to me, and again, like I said, this is a shorter card. I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I only have 7 matches. So I have 7 matches compared to their 10, but I don't have any of those gimmicky matches. So that's kind of, maybe I'm in the wrong for not having kind of a weird, ref versus ref or that kind of thing. But the next one is one I personally would like to see, and that is Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo versus Christian and Edge. And Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo are WCW's tag team champions. I like Sean O'Haire. I know WWE tried to give him kind of give him a little push or give him a little something to do after all this was over. He was great in WCW too, and he was great as a tag team guy. But I would have him go over. I think he used a swanton as well, and I would have them go over Edge and Christian again, kind of sparking that you've got another tag team storyline, because this will kind of bring all the titles together at some point in time. So I think that would be a great match. I think it would be, I mean, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 minutes. It's hard to say how long these matches could go, but again, like I'm shooting for, I'm trying to think of everything possible when I do these booking kind of things. I'm trying to shoot for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and I think 7 matches would do it. So this is a kind of a, I don't know, man. I just kind of put a match together. This is before the main event. And I really just wanted to get not Kidman. I wanted to get Kane and Undertaker in on the card. That's the only reason this match is here. Because I'm thinking of, well, people want to see, the big names, and it's a pay-per-view. So I put Kane and Undertaker in to kind of have this mystery match. Like, oh, well, they're going to be out in the ring and we're going to do this. We want to go up against whoever WCW's got. And they just kind of, and then I kind of have like Shane McMahon come out and just kind of be like, well, here's Kidman and Sean Stasiak. So you're kind of feeding the beast, if you will. So to me, I would have Kane and Undertaker smash them. Squash. It's a squash match for sure. Tons of choke slams. I believe Undertaker was doing last ride at this point in time. Tombstones. Just getting in the good moves, the great moves that people want to see, and giving people just that, yeah, I saw Undertaker choke slam Billy Kidman, just a massive like 30-foot choke slam. You know what I mean? Just something like that. That to me, that would be that memorable moment that you'll see. So that would kind of get the fans kind of hyped up for the main event, right? Because you're watching, these are WWE fans. They're watching 2 of the bigger WWE stars just destroy 2 WCW stars. So I would go that route. I think that would be okay. I think that'd be cool. We'd get into it. It'd be great. Sets up your main event. Now, I just said I'm not a big fan of 6-man tags. And I'm not. But when I was looking over this, it made sense to me to have in this very first invasion to not, there wasn't the 10-man like on the original card. I am doing a 6-man match. I just kind of hit a wall, because it's that problem of who do I have on WCW main event wise that I can build stories with afterwards to keep this going. So for WWE, I ended up having The Rock, Steve Austin, who is the WWF champion at the time, and Kurt Angle. So that's Team WWE or WWF. I go back and forth between WWF and WWE. So that's your first team. Your second team, I have Booker T come down. He's still the world champion. I have DDP come down. So you already know those 2. And this is also another mystery kind of thing. I turn around and I think, you know what? I think there does need to be a defector. I think that the angle with Austin flipping over to WCW was one of the was one of the better things to come out of that show. So I wanted that to happen again, but not with Austin. I brought down Chris Benoit. And again, I looked up to see why he wasn't on this card. I couldn't find anything. If there was a real reason why he wasn't on this card, then, that would be something I would I would obviously take him off because I wanted this to be as real and as plausible as possible. So DDP, Booker T, Benoit is your WCW team. And again, I would have this being one of just back and forth, and maybe DDP hits the diamond cutter on like Kurt Angle, and then Austin, gets him and Booker T can start their feud a little earlier than what it had been. We just passed the anniversary of those two throwing it down in a grocery store. You know what I mean? Which is a great angle I'll talk about some other time. But so you have your champions going at it, which is what I really wanted. And this is where you could start Benoit and Angle's feud if you wanted to, or you could turn it to be DDP and Angle and The Rock and Benoit. To me, there's a lot I can do with those 6 guys going forward to buy time. Because like I said in the beginning, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm buying time. I'm opening doors to get different storylines because I want to get to where the NWO is available. That would change the landscape of this invasion. Like if WCW can hang on and they can get some big wins here and big wins there, and they can snag some of the WWE titles, like the European title was still active at this time. If they could get the tag team titles and, just be one of those things of WWE somehow could get the WCW, just stuff like that. And then I would have NWO come in, and I'm not saying NWO would clean house. I'm not counting on Sting coming in because that didn't happen. But I would somehow try to keep this alive until NWO got there. And that's it for me. That's it for this is how I would have rebooked WCW Invasion. And this is the one where I just had WCW contracts that were picked up by WWE. So that was part 1. That's that one. So the next time I am going to rebook this same invasion angle, but I'm going to do it with very little restrictions. It's going to be who was ever on. It would be it'd be who was ever on WCW's roster at the time of sale, and WWE picked up all of those contracts. So I'll do that next time. That's a little more fun. I had more fun booking that, and I did have some more gimmick match. I had some gimmicks. I had some cool stuff that I like, some kind of stuff that would throw back in history of wrestling. And I'll explain all that, and we'll do that the next episode. Thank you for checking it out. Thanks for listening, watching. Check out the YouTube channel, WrassleVerse, Instagram, WrassleVerse, all over these podcast platforms. So that's it, everybody.